problem was that this last chapter kept on growing. It was becoming too big because there were so many things going on in the China-Korea relationship. And I spoke to a number of experts in Beijing and in Seoul about this. Some of my Chinese friends say that I write this too much from a Korean perspective. And I don't agree with that. I mean, I'm first and foremost a China expert, not a Korea expert. But I think it is important to take the views and the opinions and the background of the smaller country into consideration when you write a book like this. And in particular, because of the division of Korea, into two parts, that this is the central problem in terms of the relationship between Korea and China. So I had to, in many ways, take a more of a Korean position, not in terms of my own views, but in terms of how I see the situation from, than I think what many people had expected, that I would focus much more on China than on Korea. This balance between principle and pragmatism at that point was something that actually served Korea quite well, I think. I agree that when you get to the late 19th century, many of these ideas had moved away from the practical realm and had become deeply ideological in the sense that they become much more inflexible than what was the case before. And I think that was a real problem when the Japanese aggression against Korea in the late 19th century got underway. I think many Koreans for far too long believed that their principal position on Confucian values, righteousness being among them, would serve as a kind of protection of Korea against these kinds of attempts by the Japanese to destroy the country. Generally balanced relationship in terms of the region overall. It's also its appeal to principles that, the idea of state equality is not a Western idea. It's not something that is just connected to Westphalia. It's also deeply a Confucian idea. I think some Korean policymakers are quite aware of this, but I don't think it has been used effectively enough, whatever party the Korean leaders have come from in terms of the relationship with China, because these values, even though they're held more strongly in Korea than in China, they still mean something. Chinese leaders do not always realize how significant China's North Korea policy is for perceptions of China in South Korea. And this, I think, is a weakness on the side of Chinese policymakers. Of course, there are historical reasons for this, going back to the Korean War, etc. But it also goes a bit deeper than that, I think. There is this sense that one can have, ideally, it would be possible to have good relations for China, both with the North and with the South. And I think that's possible, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And as long as China is more concerned with its relationship with the North than it is with its relationship with the South, this is going to create a lot of trouble for Chinese foreign policy. And I think I would go as far as saying I think that is a mistake, on the Chinese side. I'm not arguing that China should end its relationship with North Korea. I mean, if you read the book, you see that I'm not arguing that at all. But I am saying that I think it's important to release those two parts from each other, and particularly get rid of this almost reflex kind of attitude that you sometimes find in Beijing, that North Korea is our Korea, meaning the Chinese Korea.
That was very interesting.
South Korea is the Americans' Korea, the one that has been occupied by the United